everybody. Let's start by talking about a really important topic, which is when to not do breathwork, and also when to not do breathwork on your own, in my view. So from what I've seen, I can only think of one condition where you really shouldn't do breathwork at all. And that's if you have schizophrenia or if you have a history of psychotic episodes. And sort of to explain this in a sort of more metaphorical way and not in a super precise sciencey way, when you do breathwork, what tends to happen a lot is that kind of your normal everyday life self-image, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what the other people do, this kind of thing actually dissolves a little bit. And for most people, that's extremely helpful because our self-image tends to be too strong and too static, right? It doesn't really change enough. It doesn't adapt to our life circumstances. And so dissolving it a little bit can actually be extremely healing in lots of different ways. But if you have schizophrenia or you have a history of psychotic episodes, that's usually related to the fact that your self-image is already quite fluid. If that already sometimes tends to break down, you don't want to increase the chance that this kind of centered, grounded, maybe also a little bit limited self-image dissolves too much to work in everyday life, basically. So that's the one, that's really the one condition where you shouldn't do breath work, unfortunately. And then there's a couple of other conditions where I would say it's really, really useful and highly recommended to do breathwork not on your own, but really with a guide, not just also with a sitter, not just with a friend, but really with a guide who knows what's going on. The first one I would say is if you know that you have really intense trauma in your past and that it might come up, because if you're doing breathwork on your own, one of two things can happen. One could be that your system kind of goes like, oh, that's too much to unpack now. This would be too much. I'm not going to go there. And then you basically end up having quite a frustrating experience and kind of banging your head against the wall and not really getting into the flow of the breath work. Or your system might open up and release a lot of trauma. And in many cases, that can be very healing, very helpful. But if you're doing this on your own, it may also be that a lot comes up and that you may have a hard time integrating that just on your own. And that can be quite uncomfortable, possibly also scary. And in those kinds of cases where you might have really intense emotions, it can be extremely helpful to have a guide with you to kind of hold space for you, to give you like a safe structure, and also to help you integrate afterwards. Then the second condition is pregnancy. So you can do breathwork when you're pregnant. I actually did breathwork until I was, I think, 7 months pregnant or something like that. And then it just gets logistically a little bit annoying. So you can do breathwork, can be actually very helpful. I found it very joyful, actually. But of course, you want to take it quite a bit easier, possibly. You don't want to breathe super, super intensely. And also you really want to check in constantly with your body and see, what feels right, what feels maybe like a bit too much. And so I would say that's also much easier to do if you have a guide there. And I would also mostly recommend this for people who are quite experienced breathers already. So maybe the first breath work I wouldn't necessarily do when you're pregnant. And then the third condition is asthma and other breathing related difficulties. So again, I've seen people who have done breath work, for example, with asthma, and actually who have had lots of benefits from breath work for their breathing condition. But again, you need to take it quite slow. You need to really check in with your body, what works, what doesn't work. And for that also, it's really useful to have a guide. Right, so these are the 3 conditions where I would recommend that you start off with a guide, for sure. Start off with a guide. Very intense trauma, pregnancy, and breathing conditions like asthma. Right. If you have any more questions about this, or also comments or things to add that I might have forgotten, then you're very welcome to do that below in the comments. Bye. Happy breathing.